Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this video that's gotten around. A lot of people have talked about it, but there was one thing I hadn't seen talked about. So Vice does all these videos where they bring in people from different sides of the aisle, and apparently they film them for hours and compile whatever they end up with to fit into an hour. So one of the discussions was about feminism, and they had two men who are trans women on the panel, and they talked about a bunch of different things, but one of the things they did talk about was transgenderism. And I found one thing so fascinating about something that a woman said to Pearl. I don't know her last name, but she's very famous. She's a pro athlete and talks about a lot of like feminism and women and stuff like that, and kind of more based sort of thinking. And some stuff that was said to her was just so remarkable, and we'll get into it when we get into that segment. But maybe no one else wanted to, I don't know, take the bullet and say the very obvious thing because it maybe comes off too crass and too mean. But hey, I guess I'll do that today. Also want to talk about in Minnesota, the state legislature has just passed a bill so that if you don't have to prove your residency to be able to have a driver's license. So people were very excited about that, and the left and people on the right are obviously very concerned. So I'll briefly go into that. Also, a pro-life person who was targeted by the Biden administration did end up winning his case, thankfully. So we're happy about that, and we'll briefly go into that. And I also want to talk about my trip to March for Life and show you some more little snippets. And encourage you guys to go check out like the full video on YouTube and so on. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. You can pre-order my book. Of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion on ebook right now. So go ahead and pre-order that. But if you're waiting for the paperback, you gotta just wait a little bit longer and I'll let you know. But please go on the website, sign up for different updates so you can be notified. Also, I do write other books. This is a picture of me in my books. I mostly write fiction, actually. So I have 15 books published right now. My new book would make 16. So that is not in the photo. But one of my books, since it is Black History Month, nearly upon us, I do have a historical fiction fantasy. This is a book that that's largely recommended to folks, especially since I recommend that you'll probably never have read something quite like it. So imagine like X-Men in the Civil War era, something along those lines. So if you can go to my website for my books, let me just pull up my actual website for that really quick, is ninjadustpublishing.com. But if you do go to blackteennews.com, there isn't, under the merchandise page at the top, there's a banner that has a picture of my books on them. If you click on that, it will take you to my book website. So you can go ahead and do it that way, or go directly to the website. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. Obviously, I think it's good, or I wouldn't have put it out there. But go ahead and check out some of my stuff. And otherwise, we got merch on the Black Teen News site that you guys can pick up yourself. Like, I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. A lot of people really like that one. And we got the goat hoodies, goat t-shirts. We got the all I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, gas under $2, no new wars, etc., and this lousy T-shirt. So, you guys can pick up something like that at the store. For those of you still on the Trump train, but ooh, there's some tension, which we talked about yesterday. We're not going to get into that today. If you also like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. It costs to stream, costs to run my website, it costs to do to travel. I'm thankful everyone who did help me get to March for Life, especially my gold sponsors who helped me go. And I got my silver ones there at the bottom, but my gold sponsors, Bride of Michigan PAC, Michigan Conservative Coalition, and Plymouth Right to Life. So I do very much appreciate that help there. But if you would like to help just the overhead of Black Teen News and to help it expand, you can go to blackteennews.com/donate, whether it's $10 or $20. People do more, 150, etc. I mean, very appreciative of anything you guys are willing to part with to help further on the website and the page and everything. And it's definitely not taken for granted. So I understand if you can't, and even if you don't want to. But I do thank you for watching. I do thank you for commenting. I thank you for watching live. I thank you for the people who watch back. All those things really do help. Even like the watch hours of you sitting there and watching something all the way through, especially on YouTube right now, that really does help. Commenting helps, tagging different people, all of that really helps. So I do thank you, but I do especially thank people who go the extra mile. So since we are on that topic, I'm not going to have a funny today. I don't have a funny. And thank you to the comment. Said you're awesome, so thank you. I don't have a meme today, but I do want to go ahead and share a little snippet. I did post a new video today on my YouTube. It's just on my YouTube page right now. I'll go ahead and put it on Facebook too, but of this video when I was at the March for Life. And this isn't the whole video that I put out. I'm just going to play a little snippet of it. So I played a little snippet from this group yesterday. But this is a different part of the interview. So these folks are really, really, really fantastic. Give me 1 second. Pulling it up. Let me do the whole thing really quick.
My name is Carl Reeves.
So we're going to listen to him, and then I'm going to go a little bit forward.
From the Upper Room Church of God in Christ. I'm with the Happy Warriors. Can I get a loud from Happy Warriors? From the Upper Room Church of God in Christ, Raleigh, North Carolina. Our pastor name is Bishop Wooden, Patrick Lane Wooden Sr. out of NC 3rd. We are pro-life because in the Black community, our young ladies account for about 8% of the population as far as ovulating, but in North Carolina, we account for 50% of the abortions. So we have a genocide going on in our neighborhood, and it's only what you do for Christ will last. So that's why we go out on Saturdays and we do our best to invite young ladies to make the right choice, which is life. That's not all we do. We also have a group that goes and works with the young ladies after the child is born, a child advocate type of organization that we actually put our shoe leather to pavement and we make it happen.
So what he is saying about there being a disproportionate amount of Black babies or minorities babies killed in general, it's absolutely true. It's everywhere. These numbers seem to be in Michigan. The population, I believe, is like 14%, but we're 56% of the abortions. And so that you'll see, and it's so creepy. You'll see Biden and other folks say, well, women of color especially need abortions. I'm like, how about we especially help figure out a way to not only need these abortions, but help to stop them in the moment that they're having them, try to help them reconsider, figure out what they need to kind of put them away from this path, because the reality of abortion is that it is killing these black babies. So it's very strange. They come with this savior complex, but it's like you are very eager to help us kill ourselves off. It's very strange, very suspicious even. I'm going to move a little bit forward. Play.
We talking about making, but other than that,
oh, this is great. So I had asked them, what do you think of pro-choice Christians? And
Evan, I have plans for you. All right? Come on, mama. You can make it.
yes,
Man.
that's good. Thank you.
All right, so it was good. All right.
there's a lot of people talking about pro-choice Christian nowadays. Does anybody want to speak
No
to
such
that?
thing.
Not possible.
It's not possible.
I mean, unless you're talking about choose you this day who you would serve. That's
Jeremiah
pro-choice.
1:5.
Yeah,
That's the only choice that we're talking about
Yeah.
making.
That I thought that was such a great response. Choose you this day who you would serve. Talking about you serving God or serving obviously the other dude, but let's keep going.
But other than that, no, we choose life. God chose life.
God gives life, God takes life, right? That's why we're here today.
Pro-choice
Since Roe versus Wade,
choose you
there's
this
been
day.
64 million babies aborted, right? How many millions have been black? Over 20 million in counting. That should be an alarm to all of us. We're here for all unborn babies. But when it comes to a choice, God gives us, He's the choice. He's the one that gives us purpose and cause. We don't have that choice. You may say you're a woman, you make your own choice. That's a liberated move there. To be able to say you have your own choice. If you have your own choice, then you'll be able to go out here on 11th Street and I would say prostitute. And if you do that, you're gonna go to jail, right? That's consequences to a choice. To making a choice of an unborn, that's a life.
Yep.
Our mother kept us. Your mother kept you. It should matter.
Proverbs 6.
It should matter. So
And they say choose, right? Pro-choice. Let's finish the sentence. Choose what? Right? Let's finish the sentence. What are you choosing to do? You cannot choose what you're going to do with somebody else's body.
Exactly. Finish the sentence. I'm gonna let you guys go ahead and finish watching that at YouTube, and you can find the whole interview there with these folks. It's like maybe the video is like 5 minutes in total, worth your time. But I found these folks while I was marching, and all of a sudden I heard gospel music, and I was like, let's go talk to them. So they had great commentary, but yeah, I care about all our unborn babies who are killed through abortion, and the mothers and women who are coerced into it, women who don't know any better, the lies of the industry, the effect that it has on the entire world. So it's not just a racial thing of only caring about the black babies or Hispanic babies or whatever, but it's very odd that so many people care about racial disparities. Like we hear about policing, we hear it about when COVID happened, the disproportionate amount of black people who are dying, even though obviously there's different comorbidities that can explain some of that. But in Michigan, they made it they said we had some kind of a health emergency because of racism, because there's a disproportionate amount of black people who were dying of COVID than other races, was what they were saying. But in our state, again, in Michigan, 56% of the babies who are killed are black. So why is it so much that you care in every other situation, but when it's this situation, the racial discrepancy doesn't mean anything? As a matter of fact, you look at that racial discrepancy and say, wow, we really need to protect abortion because these are the women who are having the abortions. So we need to make sure they're extra accessible to them. Sounds if you believe that abortion is taking a life, and that's just the reality. If you believe otherwise, that is a belief, like almost like a religious belief, actually, because it's just the reality of the situation. So we all know that it takes a life. So if you're advocating that women need more access to be able to do that, especially because of their skin color, their economic circumstance, I mean, that is just eugenics, and it is very evil. And that was, you're going back to the roots of organizations like Planned Parenthood. Though Margaret Sanger, there's a bunch of like negative articles on her now. I don't like her or anything, so far be it for me to stick up for her. But she wasn't into abortion like the people who took over, but she was still a eugenicist, and she believed like birth control would like people would, the folks she didn't like, minorities and other folks, would weed themselves out through like birth control and other sort of means, but wasn't into, from what I can find anyway, using abortion as a means of, well, I guess she would encourage is using it as a form of birth control, but she didn't push it like other people who took over pushed for it. So Alan Guttmacher, who took over Planned Parenthood after her, which just like Guttmacher Institute and stuff was named after, he was also a eugenicist. So it is deeply rooted in, and we see people even still use those talking points even still today, even though they have in their heads maybe a good intention, but it's still very twisted. In any other situation, I would dare say that they would say it was racist. So when people talk about systemic racism, I'm like, the most obvious example is obviously the abortion industry, but they don't want to go there. And then they say, well, it's their choices though. And I'm like, so what about choices and how they end up making different disparities in other situations? They don't want to hear that. But when it comes to abortion, it's all about people's individual choices. It's very, very, very interesting how people will twist themselves into principles. There's some more commentary I'd like to have with you guys regarding an argument I just had with somebody, but I'm going to table that because we got a lot to get through today. And I don't necessarily want to have an hour and a half long broadcast like I did yesterday. I believe we all had a good time yesterday, but I like to keep it around an hour. So anyway, very quickly, I want to mention that there was a story that I was monitoring. I had mentioned a bit that there was a man who was targeted by the Biden's DOJ for he was facing up to like 11 years for protesting at like an abortion clinic. And Mark Hoke, he ended up, being exonerated by the jury. And had like a water bottle. So he's free and clear. They let him go. So here's just him coming out and saying his piece.
And support and encouragement, stay the course, all over the world. It's not just Philly. It's just not the United States. It's all over the world. And how do you not feel the gift of that, the blessing of all that? And so, to all that may hear this, thank you. Sincere thanks to my wife and children. And, just the financial support was there for my wife to help her, God forbid she would need it. And people just came through with a yes that way, with a generous way of saying, we love you, we're here for you, we'll support you, no matter what. Thomas More Society assured me, we're with you to the end. That's what they told me. I'm sure this guy would be too.
So, long story short, he was at like a clinic doing like sidewalk advocacy. Someone, with the I guess group who's no longer there, someone named Bruce Love ended up having an altercation with him, which he was harassing his son. So he like pushed him, and I think it caused him to fall down and whatever. So they did get the police involved, and they didn't think it was a big deal or whatever, but the DOJ decided to go after him anyway. So he had a trial, and they they said not guilty. So he's not going to have to deal with that. But I think this was obvious targeting from the Biden Justice Department. And it made people concerned about, and I think they just wanted to prosecute him and to put stuff out like this out there to scare other people away from doing any sort of advocacy and trying to interfere and from women from making that decision at the abortion clinic. And people can say, well, that's their decision, and you got to let them do that. Even if you believe that abortion is necessary, like a necessary evil, Why wouldn't we as a society do everything that we could to convince women to not go through with it? Because at the end of the day, it is taking a life. Like if it is a necessary evil, it doesn't need to be option A. It doesn't need to be option B. It doesn't need to be option C. It needs to be all the way at the very, 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 very end. Especially a lot of people mentioning the turn away study. You got all these headlines, is they follow different women to see what happens when they're turned away from abortion, and they're like, oh, women have financial issues, etc., blah blah blah, when they have babies they can't afford. Imagine that. But one thing that was in the study that they didn't really broadcast different places, I heard this from secular pro-lifers pointed this out to me. If you don't follow secular pro-life, they are a group of atheists who are pro-life. So they talk about the philosophy, they talk about science, they talk about the laws. They're all very knowledgeable, but they're just not religious. So they're a great resource. So I'd follow them. I really, really, truly recommend it. I'm gonna reach out and have. I met one of the heads of secular pro-life while I was at the Students for Life Summit, and I very much want to have them on the show to just talk about different things. Well worth your time looking into their stuff. But they pointed out the turnaway study, and that 96% of women who are turned away from abortion, like they're going to get an abortion and they're not allowed to because of the law or whatever reason, that 96% of them don't regret not getting the abortion, and that they observe women over the term of like 5 years. But just like within a week, a third of the women don't regret not having the abortion. So if 1 week can make a difference, just deterring these women, like a week can make all the difference between them saying, man, I'm glad I didn't kill my baby, because they, have experience in love and have relationship with their child. What our culture, our abortion culture is so immoral. I don't know how you can argue otherwise, to just say, oh, this choice is so important. But if we could stop you from making this terrible, heinous mistake, and you would love your child and most likely raise them, why wouldn't we try to stop you? Or even beyond like how a woman particularly feels about everything, it's wrong to have the abortion because it is taking someone else's life. But knowing that you could go on and not regret having the abortion, I think that's game-changing information. What we allow is really, really immoral. Again, should be option Z. But I'm very glad that Mark didn't have to go to jail for 11 years. And all props to people like him and the group in North Carolina. I think it was North Carolina, South Carolina, maybe it was South Carolina. The Happy Warriors, their name was Happy Warriors, who go out and really put their feet to the pavement and try to make a difference. So very, very glad about the outcome of this story, and it should not have gotten this far. Another story that's pretty interesting is that CNN's ratings are just like garbage right now. But they have been, which I guess there's been a huge decline in sort of media numbers anyway. And the Trump really probably saved a lot of people's careers, made a lot of people a lot of money on the left and the right. You see a lot of it's interesting seeing some grifters like Lincoln Project and other folks who are even like the Bulwark, who are devoted to pointing out bad things about DeSantis too, because at the end of the day, they want Trump to be the nominee or be the person who's still out in front so they can be the opposition to them and have their grift and get paid by folks on the left as the good conservatives or whatever, good Republicans who oppose. There's so much grift money surrounding Trump. So CNN, MSNBC, all these folks got a huge boost from the stories being about Trump every day, the outrage surrounding Trump, and Trump is like a huge business himself. So of course he hasn't been in the news or need to be in the news as he has been in throughout his presidency and on the campaign trail. So I think CNN has truly felt this. And then people trusted CNN or wanted to trust CNN as like being a neutral party, and that mask sort of fell away. So CNN, I mean, Fox has a lot of people who are on the right who watch Fox, but Fox has a lot of independents who also watch Fox. I think a lot of people are turning away from cable and watching more things like podcasts and stuff like this. So they got a lot of stuff to try to work out to get people back on the TV train, as so many people turn to streaming on alternative forms of media. But CNN, they were also activists, but they don't do activism as good and extreme as MSNBC. So if people don't see them as a serious news channel, and if they're not extreme enough for the lefties who really love MSNBC, which is just a ridiculous network, um they're just not doing well. So like Don Lemon had to be moved to like the morning. So I saw this headline because Megyn Kelly had tweeted it out, and she said these are like apocalyptic numbers. She didn't use those terms, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing. But she said 5 alarm is what she said. But Rap Pro, I think this is a CNN. No, that's a different website. The Rap um upcoming program changes likely to make matters worse. An insider sells the Rap. Um, Boy, the hits keep coming for CNN semi-new CEO Chris Litch, and we don't mean the network's lineup. CNN just notched its lowest ratings in 9 years across all its day parts for the week of January 16 through January 22 in 2023. According to Nielsen, average just 444,000 viewers in prime time, 93,000 in the all-important age 25 to 54 news demographic, and 417,000 in viewers and 80,000 in the demo for total day. It's the first time since May 2014 that the network failed to reach 450,000 viewers. By comparison, during the same period, Fox News drew 1.4 million viewers and 176,000 in the demo, while MSNBC notched 629,000 total viewers and 69,000 in the demo. In primetime, Fox News had 2 million viewers, 256,000 in the demo, and MSNBC had 943,000 viewers and 91,000 in the demo. Some especially troublesome news out of the week's Nelson's numbers is that Litch's primary programming move, CNN This Morning, also suffered the lowest week since its launch just 3 months ago. It averaged just 331,000 viewers, while Fox and Friends had nearly 1 million, and Morning Joe drew 760,000. So yeah, they're not doing well. Don Lemon ended up getting moved to This Morning sort of show. And I so the new president who came into CNN, they started removing like these Zucker folks, loyalists, and people who were just seen as like too nonpartisan, too extreme. And Don Lemon is a hack. He really, really, really is. And but he's also like their black guy, not like their black. He's their black guy. So I don't think that's someone that they easily maybe felt that they could fire, moving him to the morning and it not doing well. Maybe they will look for an excuse to ultimately get rid of him. Not that they didn't have plenty of reason before, but maybe they'll feel like they have kind of more cover to do that. So we'll see what happens with CNN. But yeah, they're not doing well. You just hate to see it. Cry me a river. Oh, cry me a river. CNN. So, very quickly before I jump into my big story or big conversation, because it's not really a news story, it's more of like a culture thing and kind of late on the ball, but I want to talk about it. In Minnesota, they have passed a bill in the House, and now they got something similar is working through the Senate to make it so that you can get a driver's license without having to prove your legal residency. And so people who are for it say that, hey, folks who are here contributing to our economy may not necessarily be legal. It's wrong for them to not have the IDs. And that's a bit bonkers, I would say. People who are opposed say that, hey, we shouldn't give incentives for people to come to Minnesota who are not legal. And they're also concerned about possible voter fraud. If people have IDs and people don't really look into it, maybe they could go ahead and vote because they have these issued IDs, identification and driver's licenses. The people who are also for it say that, hey, it'll make people safer because these people will, be able to go and get official driver's licenses and really learn the rules of the road, etc. I heard some people say if you can't speak English and don't understand the signs, then that's a danger. But I think that kind of cuts in the favor of the argument that it would be a good thing if they had the driver's license or are taught. But again, but I'm not for the incentive for people who break the law to kind of make life easier for them who have broken the law in that regard. So and I certainly understand the concerns about the voter fraud, but here's like it was like 69 to 60, I believe the vote was, but they're really, really celebrating. Suspicious. Very suspicious. How folks are just very excited about that. Very, very excited about that. Yeah, a friend of mine who I follow on social media, he had commented, I believe he lives in Minnesota, so he's not happy about it. But he said the leftists are excited that HF4 passed the House that allows illegal immigrants to obtain state IDs and driver's licenses. Why are they so excited? The reason Dems say we can't have voter ID is because too many POCs are incapable of obtaining a photo ID. So, yeah, this seems rather contradictory. Can we get IDs or can we not get IDs? Like this, it seems cruel to celebrate this. Because I thought we were just, I don't know, too dumb and too incapable. Have you ever seen that? Is it Amy Horowitz, who went to like Harlem? Well, first he went to like a liberal college and was asking people like about requiring ID, and they said no, it's racist because black people can't get IDs. They don't know how. They don't have the money for it, etc. And then he went to like Harlem and was asking black people, do they have ID? And they're like, yeah, I have ID right now. Like, I can show you my ID. And then they're like, do you know where the Secretary of State is? And they're like, yeah, it's on such and such street. So huge disconnect in the world. Huge disconnect in the world. So we'll see how that continues to go in Minnesota, but that state is becoming really troublesome for Republicans. We'll see if they can slow that down. This it has to go through the Senate as well, but it's passed the House, and people are very, very excited about it. Looked like a fiesta. So, anyway, moving on. Let's talk about this video from Vox that came out some time ago. So they have these big sort of conversations with different people talking about all kinds of different topics, but this one was about feminism in general and they had um a Pearl, who's very, very popular, and some other popular YouTubers and activists. They had two trans people on the panel, which was pretty interesting. So we're gonna look at the section. Hold on. We're gonna look at the section where they talk about transgenderism, because the reason why I'm bringing this up, and I thought about just doing a TikTok about it, but there's more that I guess I wanted to break down this entire segment. But there's something particular. Let me like pump the brakes for a moment, because there's something I want to note. So it's so weird to me how aggressive like these trans women simps are, these females that are allies, and how angry they will get at women for saying, "Don't call me sis." Like Dylan Mulvaney is a man. If you say stuff like that, people come at you so aggressively, and not just trans women or men or whatever come at you to push back. It'll be women. There'll be women like in my comments who are so angry at me. There was someone yesterday, or the day before yesterday, they're in my comments. They're really upset about a video I did where I was going back and forth. Well, not going back and forth, but I was explaining the history of like the cisgender, and that we're not, because there was a trans woman who said, we're not trying to take womanhood away from, like, you can't take womanhood away from us. We are women, but we are concerned about, people coming into our different spaces. And so I start listing different things and had different examples of like the We Spa incident of women getting impregnated in prisons by obviously men who identify as women. And I showed, William Thomas, Leah Thomas on the swim team. So I had different examples of women, of women being concerned about stuff. And they said this video is very transphobic. So what's transphobic about this video? Nothing's hateful. It's just like pointing out things that are true. And the reason why it was transphobic is because I'm not inclusive enough. I'm not inclusive enough because I don't want men in women's spaces. So I said, okay, do you believe that men should be in women's prisons? Yes or no? And they said, men aren't in women's prisons. And I literally had an example that I showed of the women getting impregnated by trans women. Women can't impregnate other women, unless they have like some kind of turkey baster in someone's sperm that they did not produce. So no, women can't impregnate women. Trans women are not women. That was obviously men who did that. And yes, there are men in women's prisons. So they did the denial thing and dodged the question. And they're done with me. So I know they're not going to respond. But my question to them is like, do you believe that males should be in female prisons? Do you believe males should be in female prisons? Because I'm assuming most people would say no. And do you believe that males should play on female sports teams? And most people are going to say no. Do you believe males should be in female women's shelter? Most people are going to say no. And if you say yes, then I guess we'll just tear down every single barrier between men and women, and we'll just let them all, compete together and let all the women lose, and, let all the spaces. Isn't it crazy that feminists were so angry about man spreading? Like, people are still mad about it. But in 2016, there were so many people complaining about man spreading. And now we have to let the men spread in our sports, in our women's shelters and prisons, etc., our spas, or else we're just terrible, bigoted people. That doesn't make any sense to me. We're living in the upside down. It's all very ridiculous. So if you don't believe that male should be in female prisons, a trans woman is just as male as every other male in the men's prison. So why should they be in the female prison? Just because you've convinced yourself that woman is so different than female? That seems a little crazy to me. That seems a little out there. Too out there for me to take. But it's very odd that you have all these females who are, they'll say they're allies, but they're an enemy of you if you're not willing to jump on the train, and they are catty and they attack. And I wonder what is the like full psychology and the reason behind this. I'd love to, I don't know, talk to Abigail Schreier or Jordan Peterson or somebody about all this, because it it's so baffling. Maybe some of it has to do with like just the basic high school kind of cattiness of girls, like the circling around like the popular mean girl sort of situation, like the biggest sort of fish or in the sea, like in Mean Girls. It was like people hated, and were afraid of and despised Regina George, and but everyone wanted to be her, and wanted her praise and attention. So is that what it's like when these folks, especially like young girls, on apps like TikTok, rally around Dylan Mulvaney and stick up for Dylan and will fight for Dylan, even though Dylan has said he finds it more offensive to be called a man than a sexual predator. I'm not making that up. What a weird thing to say, and said he would like it to be legal to even call him a man. And has now done this reconstructive surgery, shaved down his bones and stuff. So you have people who will stand so hard from, and again, not people who are just trans. You also have other women who will come and do it as well. And it is so baffling to me. Maybe it's because they are allies on so many different social issues that they're still like, coming together with the other. And this is the other that's at the height of the hierarchy. And again, just circling around and uplifting that shiny plastic mean girl. And they see who that is right now. And if you're, I don't know, the bookworm smart person who's just like facts, reality, logic, they're like nerd. And they want to tie you to the flagpole. So that's kind of what it seems like. So I want to show you this example. This video is kind of wild. So if you haven't seen it, you can watch the whole thing. It's like an hour long. They film this stuff for like hours, and they cut it down to what it is. But this is a section when they talk about transgenderism. So it's maybe I have about 7 minutes in this video. I'm sure we will talk for more than 7 minutes, pausing and stopping and commenting. But let's go ahead and watch this.
Choose. Should trans women be included in feminist conversations? How about in women's spaces?
Yes, they're women. What's the question?
Pearl,
Trans women are women.
So I want to come at this from the position of an athlete.
Oh, Jesus.
So I play semi-pro.
Wait a second. First of all, the person who said, "Oh Jesus," is a man. He's a trans woman, and he's also someone who has gotten to a big controversy because he's willing to transport like hormone drugs illegally across the country and has encouraged people to do so. So not a good person. There's also another trans person on the panel as well, and he'll talk as well, and isn't as aggressive as Eli, I think, is that his name. So saying that, oh gosh, all these folks, they talk about their experience as women, as trans women or a black women or Latina women and stuff. And so Pearl's like, I'm going to talk about my experience about sports and how it's affecting female sports as an athlete. And they're like, oh gosh. Maybe because they just know where the conversation is going, but it was just like a rude sort of blurt that I just wanted to point out before I moved on.
Basketball, semi-pro volleyball. So when it comes to like athletic spaces, I don't think that trans women should be allowed into athletic spaces because I don't think it's a fair. I think as female athletes, we work so incredibly hard for the little opportunity there is in women's sports.
Would this be a barrier for you?
There's no barrier. There's less opportunity in some industries.
That's what a barrier is.
There's less. It's not. No. It's based on the market.
Means.
Okay.
Hold on, guys.
Okay. So again, we work very hard for the.
So I'm sure they brought up the barriers because they talk because I don't remember if this is before or after, but they had conversations about different barriers that men and women that women have, and Pearl's like, we don't have barriers. So her mentioning the sports, like, oh, is that a barrier? Like, no, there's just less like there is a category of female sports and you do stuff in it, but it is a smaller market. So there are less opportunities, but she doesn't have a particular barrier as a woman compared to, like, you know, the misogynist men plotting, twirling their mustaches and smoking their cigars and talking about how they can destroy women. Anyway, let's move on.
Little opportunity there is in the space because we're not as entertaining as the men. Sorry, we're just not. And so it's like you're going to take the little opportunity that we're given. And the problem is, like, we can't compete. We can't. Like, I'm 6 foot. If I go up against a 6 foot guy and I play basketball with him, he's gonna body me.
And what happens if I go up against you?
Even if I have.
I just want to point out that what happens if I go against you? We'll come back to that.
Years more of training. And so it's like you're taking away the little opportunity that we're given and we all work so hard for. And you're just giving it back to biological guys. It's like this will be the end of women's sports.
Have you tried confidence?
Eli, hold on, Minnie.
Sorry,
Eli.
confidence can't make me bench what a guy benches.
I don't
Confidence can't make me 6'7".
So that's it. That's the moment. And I'm gonna go ahead and say the thing. I haven't heard anyone else mention. Maybe so someone else has, I'm sure, has had to have thought about this. The woman who said, have you tried confidence? So everybody on the panel keeps saying, as a Black woman, as a Hispanic woman, like they include their subcategories of women in their whole, like, overall experience of women. And if Pearl's like, you don't have barriers, they're like, as a Black woman, I have these barriers. Or this woman here who made the comment, she's, as a disabled woman. So she's someone who has a physical disability, and she tells a woman who is concerned about the physical advantages that men naturally have that she cannot compete with. You just can't. You can compete with some dudes, sure, but just overall you can't. Like, if you have, Venus and Serena, and you put them against the top male athletes in the tennis, they're going to get you just destroyed. And even if you keep going down on the list, like, of people who are ranked, they get bodied. That wasn't, I don't remember what number it was ranked. I think one of them went and, or they wanted him to play, and she was like, I'm not going to do that. They know that men have just an advantage over women. Like, it's just a fact. It's just a fact. And yet she blurted out, have you tried confidence? Have you tried So she's well aware that there are some things that confidence cannot get you. And if someone had said that to her, they would be canceled. They would say that's the meanest, cruelest thing you could have ever said if someone had said that back to her. And I'm not saying that's the same thing, but I don't understand how she can't see what she said was utterly ridiculous to Pearl. Have you tried confidence? How is confidence just going to suddenly make you taller, make you faster, change your bone density? How is that going to happen? You think Leah Thomas beating all those other girls, it was because they lacked confidence? I'm sure they were concerned about going up against the guy, and they tried as hard as they could. But you can be confident. Man, a woman can be confident. Have you ever seen, like, a video where a girl, like, goes up against a dude and she's all like, she has the confidence, and then they put her in they check her real quick? There's just a power difference. There's just a power difference. And it brings me no pleasure to mention this, to bring it up, to have to bring it up. One time I was playing basketball with my friends, and one friend, and these are male friends, and I think we're maybe about the same height, and he's small, he's skinny, my friend, and he ended up knocking me down. Like we ran into each other, or bumped into each other while we were playing, and I got knocked over, and I ended up sliding a little bit on my face on the asphalt, and I had like a mark on my cheek from a burn from the skid, and he was so apologetic. He felt so bad, and I was just like embarrassed that I got knocked over. Because my dad's just like, you're a bar, you can do anything. Like, and even as like a female, I'm like, I'm strong, I can do. But it was like, oh darn it, like like this dude knocked me over, and so I'm like, it's okay, it's fine. Like, you don't have to apologize. Like, I'm fine. But he really, really did feel bad. Someone who I follow who's a detransitioner, um, she said she really, hates the fact that men are just physically superior. And so she's someone who really would train and exercise and other stuff like that. And she had a boyfriend, and he didn't do that kind of stuff, but he can, do those pull-ups and easy peasy. And it's something that, I think she could do, but he could do more of them way easier than she could. And she really trained her body and other stuff, and he was just a dude. Like, he just has that natural upper body strength. And she, you know ended up transitioning and ended up detransitioning when she just had a wall with reality, where she realized, I can't deny the physical differences of men and women. So them, pretending that what Pearl is saying is so absurd, and that confidence will make all the difference in the world, is just really crazy. So why would someone like who's been bringing up her own physical disadvantages tell someone else to just have confidence to overcome physical disadvantages? Now, I guess the I could say that the ideology is so ridiculous that it just makes you end up having to say ridiculous things to end up, defending it. But let's go on and continue watching.
So hostile. She's sharing her
And confidence
experience
can't make
in
me
a
successful.
specific
No, she's
field.
sharing
And
I'd have to go.
No, she's not. She's a woman who's had an experience.
It's
You guys are so obsessed with your own experiences and your own existence, and yet when a woman is sitting here telling you, I feel as though this is unfair and this is compromising and this situation is not helping women, you guys are like, meh, meh, meh. But when you're like, I'm a black person that did this, 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 and this, then it's valid and fair and viable.
Eli, I want to give you the chance to respond.
So this is basically a joke of a talking point. Everyone has biological advantages in sports. How tall are you?
5'11" and a half. I'm tall.
I'm 5'8". I am a trans woman. You would crush me. You would absolutely crush
bone
me.
density, wrist strength, muscle density. You can't switch those.
Yeah, exactly. You would crush me.
But also, Eli, you would never play at the level that Pearl plays because you would never get there.
So let me give you a few more examples here too. So Michael Phelps produced more lactic acid in his body, which caused him to swim better than any of his competitors. This was widely
I gotta say, let me go back a little bit. I love the look on her face. They just had like the perfect look. Oh, they bring up Michael Phelps, like, for real, bro. Like, that's the routes you're gonna go. Let's keep listening.
Of his competitors. This was widely celebrated, and nobody contested it. Now, this is a performance-enhancing hormone. So we all have different bodies. And now I'm not saying that trans women who aren't on hormones should participate, but there are, every major medical and every major sports organization agrees that trans women who have been on hormones for between 1 and 3 years, depending on the organization, have the same competitive abilities.
The study that you're referencing had like 7 people participated.
That's misinformation, by the way. I'm referencing several different studies. I'm a trans woman and a researcher.
It's getting personal. I don't want it to be
a lot
personal.
of us live in this space where we're told that our opinions don't count because they're not the right kind of opinions, and we're constantly shouted over and talked over, regardless of what we look like, because there's one group in society that basically takes precedence, and it's frustrating. So yeah, of course, it's frustrating because when we
That laugh is crazy. I don't know why any person would be proud enough to laugh like that at all.
try to talk about it, we get shouted down, we get told to be quiet, we get.
I mean, she's already in her villain era, isn't she? Like, that's not even. I mean, it's not like an iconic sort of villain laugh, just so I don't know, forced with the evil snark. Maybe it's not forced, but yeah.
We get spooking down too as well. So there's hostility there for plenty of women.
Let's try to make this an opportunity to speak.
You're literally a white woman from Australia. You live in a bubble and you're pissed that voices that have been silenced forever finally can be heard.
That's why they have the voice, because they speak up.
Okay, we're having a conversation.
So I want to go back to the Michael Phelps thing and this attitude, this like, you're a white woman from Australia, and them talking about Pearl and how she has advantages, etc. Doesn't some of this kind of just seem like spite and jealousy? Like, it's fine if we kill women's sports, like Eli's, like they know there's a difference between the men and the women, and that women, it will destroy their sports. But it doesn't matter because there's physical advantages everywhere. And why should Pearl care? Why should they care about Pearl and that her field could be destroyed because she has advantages over other women? So it doesn't matter if men have advantages over her. Doesn't it seem like some petty catty female garbage? Like, you have advantages over us and other folks, therefore it's fine if someone dominates over you, or you're a white woman from Australia. So if someone comes in your space and bothers you, that's what you deserve. That's what you get, basically. So we're not gonna. So as I said, like back to the oppression Olympic hierarchy and these like mean girls centering around like their hierarchy of their dominant mean girl. It just kind of seems like they're all collectively gathering together because it feels good to bully people who they deem as not someone who's been marginalized. At one point in this, I don't have an example in this section that we're watching, but someone talked about Pearl and they're like, well, you're a pretty white woman or something. And she's like, you guys think I'm pretty? People call me ugly all the time. But it was just like a dig at her, as if she gets what she wants because of her looks. And that's not even like her, experience, because, people do talk trash about her, etc. So, it's all eye of the beholder. But she's just like, y'all think I'm pretty? Like, because that's not her experience with the trolls and folks that say, that are in her comments and stuff. Which, by the way, if someone comes at you, people online who are concerned about anyone who may come at you and make comments about your appearance and stuff, all you need is one person who likes you anyway. So what does it matter? Like what people on the internet say about you? Just like you have control over your feelings. So don't let someone else have that power to make you upset. So just wanted to throw out that random piece of advice for anyone. But so much of it just seems like we have an opportunity to punish people who we feel like in society have not been punished enough. Therefore, it's willing to ally ourselves with these other folks, even though like men are like misogynist and toxic masculinity, all this other. In any other circumstance, if they didn't grow up their hair long and put on a dress, they would say that they're like the enemy or whatever. But because they've done this and they've become part of the marginalized group, they're willing to let them be their Regina George, and they're the other catty people writing in the burn book and going after people who are like white women like Pearl, etc. And they're like, well, this is our time now, and we're gonna let Dylan Mulvaney, these folks, lead the way. And if you come for them, we're going to, break out our claws because they feel that they're all on the same side. Even though, as far as womanhood and the threat to women's sports are real, the threats to women in their prisons and other kind of spaces are real. It's worth it to avoid those things because at the end of the day, bullies just want they're insecure people who want power. And those are some of the most dangerous women or just people period in the world.
About transgender women participating in sports, and I wanted to allow more people to participate. Jordan, I wanted to hear from you.
So I am not a professional athlete. The closest thing I have ever done to anything athletic was I used to do competitive show choir when I was younger. And I don't feel really qualified to make carte blanche statements about whether or not trans women should compete in every kind of sport. And I understand that that is kind of, that's a hard pill to swallow. And for me, my first inclination is to approach everything through a lens of inclusivity. But at the same time, I also can't speak accurately to every kind of sport and the different things that go into it. So I really think in these instances, the decisions are best left up to the professional governing bodies that dictate these particular sports.
I just feel like in places, as an ally, in places where there's no understanding, we can just respect and not really, like, our opinions don't fucking matter.
Eli, I saw you nodding your head over there.
Several times.
So I just they'll go and they'll say that they're allies. You see this person here is very aggressive. As I said, I'll have people who come in my comments who are females. Like I can understand more like trans people coming in my comments and being very defensive. But you have females who come in and just be so aggressive against other females for feeling the way that they feel. Our choices and opinions and feelings are valid in in any other situation, but not apparently in this one. I guess anytime you oppose someone else, your opinions and feelings or whatever as a woman no longer matter; they're not valid. But they call themselves allies, but they're more like I don't know, just cult followers. They're missionaries. They're zealots who go forward for these folks. They're like the Sparrow. Was it like Red Sparrow? Like anyone who watched Game of Thrones, like the creepy church people who took over the King's Landing, and then what was their group name? What was their group name? I know there's people in the comments who watch Game of Thrones. That's kind of what they are. Like they go in and they take over, and if you don't say the right thing, they want you to walk naked in the streets with the bells saying shame, shame. That's what they want you to do. If Macy Gray says, men can't be women. If you're born a man, you're a man, and you have to have all these folks, activists, and even like the media. If you saw the interview when she like walked it back and said womanhood is a vibe, that it was painful. It was like pulling teeth, and how much like the media was even simping to make her walk it back, and then she changed it from men can't be women to womanhood is just a vibe. So they'll want to shame you until you comply with their ideology, and it is very religious. People talk about religious people and Christian nationalism and get so angry and upset and want say we got to get the Bible, religion out of government, separation of church and state, which people quote that every time someone quotes it, it's pretty much because they don't know what it means. But they totally are for secular people pushing their ideology on folks in the government and our lives. Everyone is religious in some kind of way. It's just what are you serving? So they call themselves allies, but they're doing the bidding of like their masters, all in the name of this hierarchy. Okay. So apparently my YouTube got suspended. So I am not totally surprised. We'll keep talking. We'll keep talking. So yeah, that's a bummer. That's a bummer. So let's continue watching.
This is more than about sports. This is about free and equal participation for transgender people in social life. And the right sees this as a socially acceptable way to begin to remove trans people from different engagements in our society. So it does just start with sports or bathrooms or locker rooms, something that they find is more acceptable. And then at this point, they started to move into education, getting trans teachers fired, banning trans books. This is a route that is very effective because it's seen as more acceptable. But it's also overlooking a lot of major details. Like, I mean, do y'all know how many trans women have won national titles?
One too many.
One. It's Leah Thomas is the only one.
Too many.
If
one too many?
if women's sports were actually going to end in some way, I mean, it's just not happening. Wouldn't you think there would be more trans women in sports when the majority of states do allow trans women full participation? International titles, zero. No global titles have ever been won by a trans woman.
So it looks like it was interrupted from a copyright notice. It looks like some of you guys are still commenting coming through. So I don't know if it's streaming or not. I'm just gonna click on it myself. Nope, it says unavailable. So I think it's because of the copyright from Vice and hopefully not because of triggered folks reporting it. But thank you everyone who watched it live on YouTube. We'll have to repost it. YouTube thinks the stream is bad. Why am I still seeing? I'm still seeing comments coming through on my end. So, but I definitely can't watch it on my phone. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. But it looks like it was a copyright and they didn't just try to nuke my account. So I'll have to repost some stuff later and see what we can get away with. So yes. So as far as them saying trans people haven't won any national titles, we've had people who've competed now in the Olympics who are trans, and we have different major sports leagues like who've had, I mean, MMA has had trans fighters beating the crap out of women. There have been different state competitions where state championships where women who have been, out competed by, trans women. And as Pearl said, one is too many because it's a space that they don't belong in. So my thing is though, if you have decided that that's the way that the route that you want to seek for happiness is to go ahead and go through this transformation, then either one, you seek that route and you don't go the sports route, or everybody who does go that route compete with men. You don't have to compete with females. The thing about sports, and I've said this before, is that it's physical. Yes, Pearl has an advantage over other women. She's 5'11". She's taller than me. I guess I wouldn't compete with her in basketball. We could play a little bit, but I'm sure she would, she's just more skillful and she's taller and she's faster. And obviously I'm fat. So she would defeat me. But just because you're tall doesn't mean that you're going to be good at basketball. People told my sister that, oh, you should compete. You should play basketball. She was never cut out for it. So just because you're physically, have a physical advantage doesn't mean that you're going to have the mentality for it, that you're going to have the toughness for it, the mental fitness for it, that you're going to have the discipline for it. There's other factors that go into it. But yes, people do have physical advantages. And when people see certain people of a certain height, whatever, if you wouldn't want someone who's Pearl's height to be like a jockey, like, doing the horse racing and stuff, or her being like, if you're a gymnast, you want to be like kind of on the shorter side. There's different, and your body actually does like start condensing, so you don't really grow, I guess, when you're a gymnast. So there's different physical specifications that people have to be in different sports. Like, no one is denying that sports is physical, but that's the whole entire point. That's the whole entire point. So men have too much of a physical advantage when it comes to women. So if they want to compete in the sports, if once you decide that you're going to start doing the taking different drugs, which I think that should like exclude you anyway. If they want to allow people to continue to compete, then compete with men. Everybody. Doesn't that make the most sense? Doesn't that make the most sense to folks? That makes most sense to me. Go ahead and just let them all compete with the men then. But then you wouldn't have like, Leah Thomas dominating female sports. Of course he'd be at a physical disadvantage with the other men, but he was, not winning anyway with the men really. So of course men who identify as women and go ahead and compete with females have an advantage. Of course they do. And I'm not saying that's why they transition, but there's a reason why they want to compete with them rather than compete with men. Because sports is physical. It's not about how you identify. Confidence isn't going to change anything. It's physical. That's why they make sure you're not taking anything enhancing. Dude, this is so silly. What if Lance Armstrong was like, I identify as a winner. That's why I took enhancement drugs. Because I identify as a winner and I wanted to meet that reality. Well, you can identify as a winner, but you can't take enhancement drugs to get you to where you need to be. So having the physical advantages of a man is like taking performance enhancers. That's why Eli didn't have the same kind of mentality when it came to females who are taking, testosterone competing with females, because that's obviously a difference, and that is an enhancement that women don't have. So didn't have the same energy the other way around. So just wanted to share my thoughts on that. I think there was something else, but I got kind of distracted from the live getting is the YouTube's, are you guys still watching from YouTube? You guys must be watching from YouTube. I did go look at the YouTube. It did say it was disrupted for the copyright. It looks like it's there. I see myself. So maybe they put it back up. I'm going to totally change my title though. Sometimes YouTube that's when they ding me for my titles. So keeps going in and out. Okay. Anyway, that's end of my rant for there. Last thing I want to mention, and I know we're a bit over, but I do want to bring this up. So yesterday I mentioned that there was a terrible thread of about a young man who said, actually, I don't know how old he is, but he wrote on Twitter that the love of his life had an abortion and he feels heartbroken, and he ended up deleting it because it went viral. And there are people who like reached out to him and was like, hey, you can seek this person for help. These counselors can help you deal with the grief, etc. Many people told him to. Some people opened up to him and said, my girlfriend did this, and I realized years later that I resented her. And he said, that's what I'm really afraid of. Other people are like, you need to leave this girl. And but there were plenty of pro-choice people who just had no empathy for him. So he ended up, and it was horrific, the sort of things that people were saying to him. So Secular Pro-Life had screenshotted, they blotted out his name. And they just let people know, like, men feel the sadness of losing their child. It's not just something that affects a woman. And of course, the baby who's killed. It also affects fathers, and we need to remember that. So I wrote in the comments that it's really sickening how people treated them with him with such a lack of empathy. It's okay for men to feel terrible and to grieve the loss of their children when they're brutally killed. So people didn't like that I said that. And so it's going back and forth with someone, and they're like, no child is killed. And I'm just like, child is just a son or daughter of any age. And they're like, yeah, any age, it starts at birth. I'm like, age is like any, length of time that you've existed. So no, age can start when you are conceived. They do monitor like the different weeks you exist, and there's different developmental markers that you meet, so they know that you're progressing normally and healthy. So we're not going to ignore that you exist until you're out of the womb, um, and that you've existed for periods of time. So, that's ridiculous. So then this person started arguing with me about um someone being brutally killed. And I said, if you were ripped apart limb by limb, would that? Well, I said suffocated or starved or ripped apart limb by limb. I think that you would agree that that was pretty brutal. And they said that only D&Es, and that's when they you know dilate the cervix, and they use the curette. Well, they the forceps to rip out the baby, and then they use whatever curette or whatever to scrape and whatever. So those are procedures that they normally do later. And so they're like, that's a very small percentage, and women only do that when there's heartbreaking circumstances, which I know people want to believe that and think the best of women, that they wouldn't do it for more superficial or frivolous reasons. And even if they are superficial reasons, that doesn't mean that they didn't consider put time into thinking about it. But there's still decisions that they didn't have to make. I know women who've had abortions, later in the second trimester, for reasons that were not medical emergencies or world shattering situations. So I understand that's a very effective and compelling talking point on their side, but it's just not true. It's just not true. But it is. But I mentioned, I said, like, half the abortions in my state like are like the babies being ripped apart, and they said that's a lie. And I'm like, first of all, how are you gonna say it's a lie and you don't even know what state I'm from? Like, you can at least ask a leading question and say, what state are you from? And then Google search stuff yourself, so you can come back and say, that's not true, blah, 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 and have a chart or something. That's not what they did. They just, flat out said I was a liar. So and so I said, so I, I thought it was interesting that they tried to call me out without even having information. So I went ahead and asked, like, have you looked at the statistics and the information on the procedures in my state? And they said, well, D&Es are very rare, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And they said at DNC, they don't rip out the babies. And I said, they don't rip them apart. So I said, you dodged my question. So then they finally asked what state I was from, or what state has more than 50% or has 50% D&Es. And so that really wasn't my point. So I said, you're the one who made the assertion that D&Es are the only way that a baby is ripped apart. And even when women take the abortion pill, as if you follow TikTok, you know who Chelsea Hart is. Chelsea Hart had an abortion. She's pro-choice, but she had a very gruesome abortion. And she said that her baby came out in tiny pieces. And people were very mad at her on the left because for her talking about her abortion in the manner that she did. There was a ton of drama surrounding this circumstance. I'm not going to get off the rails and explain it all today. I do have a video about it somewhere on YouTube, so you can go ahead and look it up. But she talked about how it came out in pieces and stuff, and people didn't like it because she said she lost a child. So there are women who had both abortions and miscarriages, and they say it's different. And of course it's obviously different, but I don't know, the audacity for everyone to feel a certain way about how she presented it, knowing that they did both and are still pro-choice. It was just all very weird. But she got a lot of backlash for even bringing it up in the manner that she did. And I don't think she's had a miscarriage herself before, so or maybe she has, but if she hasn't had one, then I don't know how she would make um a comparison. But she felt like she didn't like the guy that she was with. She felt like he was a bad guy in her point of view, and felt instead she couldn't, in her opinion, couldn't keep the baby. So she had an abortion, and it came out in tiny pieces with her taking the pill. So I told this person that even if you take the pill, which they described an abortion, they said most abortions are like a heavy period. That's what they described abortion. The pill, in quick, non super scientific terms or whatever, you take the pill, it cuts off like the nutrients to the baby. They're suffocated / starved to death, and then you take the second one, and then it forces heavy contractions, and then the baby comes through. And apparently not always whole. So that is a situation that can happen. But with the suction and the curette, where they suck the baby, I'm like, that's totally them ripping them apart through the high powered suction through the hole. Like, you think they just kind of, like it's a Mario pipe? It's not like that. It's not like that. So I'm like, babies are absolutely, ripped apart in that sort of way through that procedures. And I also played a video from live action and animation of them being sucked up through the tube. And by the way, the D&E numbers are like 5.6% in Michigan, and in the D&C procedures like 42 point something. So even though people, this is I think important to note, people will mention that abortions, most of happen early on, but that doesn't mean that they're not having D&Cs or even D&Es early. So just because they happen early doesn't mean that everyone is having the pill. Just want to throw that out there. So I showed them the video. I posted my reply with the video, and I said, yeah, babies are actually torn apart in this procedure. So how do they reply? They respond, you can't even have a debate without using emotional language like baby. So this person has gotten all their facts wrong, all their medical facts, their information wrong, wanted to debate about what did and didn't happen in states, and didn't even know what state it was from. And then they try to just throw everything away because I said baby. So I showed them this. An unborn offspring of a mammal, in particular an unborn human baby more than 8 weeks after conception, is the definition of a fetus. Now, if you Google this, I'm certain that they have changed this, so you will not find this right off the bat. If you Google fetus, I screenshot this a while ago, and I keep it handy with me, and I make sure that I post this. But yeah, and women, we know women if they're wanted, they call them babies, and no one bats an eye. It's just during this abortion debate, people start having exorcisms if you mention the word baby. So I just wanted to rant about how that conversation evolved, because they didn't have the facts, and then they tried to undermine my argument because I use the word baby and child when those words are accurate. But that's the power of language. That's the power of language. Oh gosh, I remember the other point from the video that I had forgotten with the trans issue. Eli had mentioned that the real reason, or a big reason, why conservatives want to protect women's sports, Republicans want to protect women's sports, is to denormalize the inclusion of trans people and to push them out of like the normalization of society, etc. That's what Eli's suspicion is, that this is just a gateway, as if Republicans don't have daughters in sports, or constituents who have daughters in sports, as if this isn't like a real thing that we'd be concerned about, and it's just for political gain. But I thought that was an interesting thing for Eli to say, because I think the opposite is obviously true. that the inclusion of women's sports is about not just integrating but changing society to force them to accept that trans women are women, and you have to deal with it. And that's why they're up in your face, that they're in the culture, they're in the sports, they're in the media, they're everywhere, because they want you to just shut up and take it and accept that this is already like a done deal. There's nothing you do about it. So even though they know that sports is physical, and it makes sense to not have, it totally makes sense for trans people to not be in, or trans women to be in women's sports. Totally makes sense. They can't do that because their ideology, there's too many other goals that it serves, having them in these different spaces, having them in front of different people, having, Tampax doing stuff with Dylan Mulvaney and other folks, having Alta doing stuff with these people. There's too many other cultural advantages in their hierarchy of power. And if they, I think one of the reasons, gosh, there's too much to kind of talk about with this point. I've mentioned it before, but I think the LGBT community is such a powerful tool for the left, especially because one of their big like foes is the evangelical right. And I think a way to restrict them in a lot of different ways is through things that would bump up against their religious liberties. And if they can silence them or use a law to um, bully them and harass them into submission or into irrelevance, then that's great for them, because then there's a lot of different power that they can assume. And they'll always just find a new group once they've like worn out their usefulness. They'll create one, I guess. But it's all just a tool for power. It really is. And so I think a lot of with this trans stuff, they're trying to see who will comply and just shut up. And the whole like pronoun thing is one thing. Like, are you willing to throw away reality for to pledge fealty to these folks? Like, will you bend the knee? Back to like the Game of Thrones reference. Will you bend the knee to their ideology and throwing up your pronouns and saying that Dylan is a woman and Eli is a woman, to go ahead and go that extra mile to say that you are letting these people know that at the very least you're willing to play ball with them. And when they know that about the people who are willing to not play ball with them, like people like me who are like, no, that's a man, those are the people that they have to aggressively attack, because they are a threat to their overall agenda and their overall plans. So we got to make sure that we push back and we keep fighting, and other people are willing to stand up and say something, because they are like a minority, but there's so many like in the sphere of culture and entertainment that it kind of seems like this is the way that things are going, and that maybe you're not a majority, that you are a minority, but it's not true. And if more people just speak up and say, I'm not a cis, I ain't a cis, then more people will be able to squash this. But you got to be brave enough to say something. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll try to figure out what's going on with the YouTube. Thank you for watching as long as you could. Anyway, please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different videos and articles, etc. Please check out different books that I have, different merch that I have, like the Roe and Casey Aborted. I also have all these Club XX lifetime membership stuff, like Sex Woman, different stuff that you guys can get at blacktnews.com. So check out different merch. And if you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation there. Don't know if I said that again at the end, but want to encourage you guys to do that. And check out my pro-life videos. God bless you. I'll see you next